What is the biggest mistake you can make when trying to become the next Captain America? It's simple. You forget that the shield isn't about physical might or blind allegiance, it's about principle. Today we're talking about the man who learned that lesson the hardest way possible, John Walker. He was faster, stronger, and more aggressive than Steve Rogers ever was, but his tenure as Captain America was defined by tragedy, violence, and a master plan to destroy the legacy from within. If you want to understand the dark side of patriotism in the Marvel Universe, this story is one you'll need to hear. Welcome back to Marvel Echoes Resonance, where we don't just look at comic history, we look at the narrative ripple it creates. I'm William, and if episode 1 on the Century was about a hero trying to forget his past, today's episode is about a hero who became Captain America because he was desperate to find his future. We're talking about John Walker, better known these days as U.S. Agent. And for those of you who know him primarily from the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and of course the Thunderbolts movie, let me tell you, the comic book origin is simultaneously more tragic and more brutal. John Walker was first introduced in 1986 Captain America number 323, during the Reagan-era 80s, an era when American identity was complex, loud, and sometimes aggressively defined. And John Walker was a reflection of that. He was a former military man, a soldier who was deeply proud of his service but felt like the country he'd come home to was, well, soft. He saw Steve Rogers as a relic, a feel-good symbol from the 1940s who was simply too nice, too indecisive, and too old-fashioned for the threats of the modern world. So what does a disillusioned former soldier do when he thinks the world's greatest hero needs replacing? Well, he goes out and gets a power-up. This is the first pivotal point of Walker's story. He and two friends get powers from the Power Broker. Now, the Power Broker isn't some mystical wizard. He's just a guy who runs a super enhancement scheme. Think of it as like dark, unregulated versions of the super soldier serum that you can buy on the black market, with no physical exam, questionnaire, and who knows what the side effects are going to be. John Walker emerges with a genuine superhuman strength, speed, endurance, arguably exceeding that of Captain America. He debuts as the Super-Patriot. This wasn't a debut as much as a political protest. Walker's entire public campaign was built around discrediting Captain America. He would stage rallies, talk big, and even organize and manage PR fights where he would make Rogers look slow and outdated. He wasn't seeking to join the legacy, he was trying to replace it. Now, here's where the political drama starts. The U.S. government, specifically the Commission on Superhuman Activities, looks at Steve Rogers and says, hey, look, we love the uniform, we love the shield, but you need to be our full-time, exclusive government operative. You report only to us. And Steve Rogers, the man who fought for the American dream, not the American government, gives him one of those most iconic moments that you know of in comic history. He walks away. He gives the commission the shield, the uniform, says, Captain America means answering to the government without question, then I'm not Captain America. And then he continues his fight known as the Captain, wearing a black costume. The commission believes the symbol was more important than the man, immediately needed to find a replacement. They needed someone strong, popular, and most importantly, someone who could follow orders and who was right there in the public eye talking about how the old Captain America wasn't good enough. John Walker. In Captain America number 333, John Walker is officially appointed as the new Captain America. To make him the best Captain America they could, the commission did some truly audacious things. They brought in the villain Taskmaster, a guy who can perfectly mimic any fighting style, the rigorously trained Walker. It's like hiring Cobra Kai Sensei to train your team's captain. They gave him the famous vibranium shield, the classic costume, and Walker was convinced he was fulfilling his destiny. But, as my dad, a military man, used to tell me, you can teach skill, but you can't teach character. Walker's time as Captain America was a disaster. He was ruthless, arrogant, and worst of all, unable to control his immense temper. His sidekick, Battlestar, one of the others that gained powers, often had to stop him from going too far. This wasn't the heroic confidence of Steve Rogers. This was toxic aggression masked by patriotism. The difference in their styles was stark. Steve fought a villain. The question was how to stop them and bring them to justice. When Walker fought, the question was, how much damage can I inflict to make sure they never bother me again? This unchecked rage leads to the first great tragedy. A terrorist group called the Watchdog exposes John Walker's secret identity. In an act of horrific retaliation, they murder his parents. Now, if you thought John Walker was angry before, you hadn't seen anything. Consumed by grief, Walker hunts down the Watchdogs. In a pivotal character-defining moment in Captain America number 345, John Walker, while wearing the Stars and Stripes, murders the perpetrators. It's a gut-punching moment that confirms that everyone feared. That a symbol of hope had become an agent of vengeance. He had crossed the moral line that Steve Rogers would never even approach. And if all that wasn't dark enough, the whole thing, the commission, the registration, Walker's appointment, and his subsequent breakdown was all masterfully executed by none other than the Red Skull. Yes, the Red Skull was playing four-dimensional chess. He knew he couldn't beat Steve Rogers with brute force, so he chose to destroy the ideal of Captain America by putting an aggressive, unstable hothead in the suit. The ultimate goal was to make the symbol of American freedom a symbol of violence and fear. The climatic showdown in Captain America number 350 pits Steve Rogers as the captain against the mentally shattered John Walker, with the Red Skull pulling those strings. It's the fight not just for the shield, but for the very soul of the mantle. In a moment of clarity, Walker helped Steve defeat the Red Skull, finally realizing he was a pawn. He was a symbol broken by the very forces he believed he was serving. When Steve Rogers restored the role of Captain America, what happened to John Walker? The commission fakes his assassination, gives him a new, darker black costume, the one wore by Steve when he was the captain, and a new name, U.S. Agent. He was officially transitioned from the failed symbol of patriotic idealism to the successful weapon of government pragmatism. He became the job that Steve Rogers refused, the guy who answers to the government, handles the dirty work, and never asks tough questions. That, my friends, is the origin of U.S. Agent. So after that incredible defining arc, what happened next? For a character like John Walker, the story doesn't end with a clean retirement. He keeps evolving, reflecting how the country views its own use of power. So here's some modern highlights to help you get caught up on the U.S. Agent. Immediately after becoming the U.S. Agent, Walker was placed on the West Coast Avengers. Now this might sound like a promotion, but it was really a crash course in humility. Unlike his time as Captain America, where he was a star, he was constantly butting heads with giants like Iron Man, the Vision, and Hawkeye. This is important because it's where he transitioned from being a symbol to being a team player, though very grumpy one. His aggressive methods, like knocking out the villain Ultron and then demanding his teammates to finish the job, were often criticized. But being forced to serve alongside heroes who operated with a higher moral code, even if he disagreed with them, slowly started to chip away at his pure, unadulterated cynicism. He got the job done, but he was always the problem child. It's the comic book equivalent of a tough kid getting sent to a magnet school where everyone is smarter and nicer than him. In the mid-2000s, John Walker took a significant and often overlooked turn. After the events of Civil War, where the American government was demanding registration, Walker ended up north and took a new role, leading Omega Flight, Canada's premier superhero team. This is a huge moment for his character development because it was the first time he was operating outside of the immediate American political machine. He wasn't the U.S. agent, he was just an agent, a leader, fighting the different ideals under a different flag, and added a layer of international depth to his character. Unfortunately, during this time, he suffered a devastating injury while fighting a monstrous entity known as the Collective. John Walker was effectively crippled, losing his mobility. This pivotal moment forces his physical and mental reckoning. He's stripped of his physical prowess and has to come to terms with the damage done to his body. This then leads us right into Norman Osborn era, known as Dark Reign. Osborn, of course the former Green Goblin, now head of global security, needed a symbolic figurehead. So he restored John Walker's mobility with cybernetic enhancements and put him in charge of the Thunderbolts, a team of anti-heroes and reformed villains. Well, or not so reformed villains, if you go read the stories. He was put in a bulky armor-like suit. The Thunderbolts became his team. Why? Because Walker, a man who had been manipulated by Red Skull and now had lost and regained his body, had to lead a team of people fundamentally he couldn't trust. He wasn't just a blunt instrument anymore. He was a cynical overseer, forced to wrestle with the concept of leading bad guys for a greater good, dictated by, well, the worst guy ever, Osborn. He was the warden of a villain prison, essentially. It all deepened his complexity, showcasing his capacity for tough leadership, even when he was physically or morally compromised. And now that brings us to the present. John Walker's status currently very relevant with modern Marvel. Following the major events of Fall of X, the subsequent line-wide status quo from the ashes, John Walker is back in his traditional U.S. agent role and has been playing a key part in the aftermath. Specifically, he's been deeply involved in the new military initiative set up to deal with the changing political landscape in the United States, often clashing with teams like the Avengers and the new iterations of the X-Men. For 2025, U.S. Agent is confirmed to be a major player in recent announced Uncanny Avengers title. This new iteration of the Unity Squad is specifically tasked with being a public-facing, government-sanctioned team that deals with mutant-human relations in a post-Krakoa era. This is the perfect role for him. He is the ultimate symbolic wedge, a non-mutant hero, formerly Captain America, who is the literal extension of government power. His presence on the team guarantees ideological conflict and showcases the tension between the state's control and heroic autonomy, which has been the echo of his character since the beginning. So if you want to jump in and see the U.S. Agent in action today, pick up the new Uncanny Avengers run. You'll be catching him at the start of a brand new major political and heroic arc. So to sum it up, John Walker started as a political statement, a critique on the American hero. He gained the power of an icon only to give his rage and his grief turn that icon into a weapon of self-destruction. And now he serves in the shadows, fighting in the gray areas that Steve Rogers refuses to inhabit. He is the paradox of patriotism, a powerful man who loves his country so much that he's willing to compromise every principle to serve it. So I'll leave you with this question. Does John Walker, as the U.S. agent, represent a necessary evil in the Marvel Universe? Or is he simply a villain in a patriotic uniform? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for listening to this episode of Marvel Echoes Resonance. I hope this deep dive into John Walker gave you the new appreciation for a moral complexity and a tragic history of U.S. Agent. If you enjoyed this episode and want to keep catching up on all the essential Marvel lore, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our daily episodes. Leaving a like and a comment really helps the channel, and leave one down below with which character you'd like to hear next. And for more content, including articles, infographics, and new reader guides, be sure to visit our website in the links below. Till next time, true believers, make mine Marvel.